Thankfulness, according to Webster's, the old Webster's, is an expression of gratitude or the acknowledgement of a favor. An expression of gratitude or an acknowledgement of a favor. And I'll just say this to kick off this. Thankfulness is an infectious, I want to call it a disease, if you want to call it that, but it's a good disease. It's something we want people to catch. But the backside of that, the other side of that, so is a negativity. Negativity is infectious, and thankfulness is infectious. I mean, if you have been around negative people for a long time, you realize you feel depleted, and you feel worn out, and you feel almost like your heart and your soul has been stripped down after a long period of time, because it's just nothing but one negative thing, one dark thing, one stripping thing, and it sort of strips the hope right out of your heart. Then flip that coin, and when you're around somebody that's gracious, kind, and thankful, and they're thanking God for this, and they're upbeat, I thank God for that, thank God for that, and they're all happy, and you wonder, geez, I don't thank God for any of that stuff, but they're thanking God for anything and everything that moves, and you get around that person, and you know what, they elevate you. They bring you up, they elevate you up, they bring you up to a place where all of a sudden you think, I want to be like that when I grow up. If I ever grow up. And so thankfulness is a very powerful attribute that God has given us to express. And again, the antonym of that is negativity, unthankfulness. Now in Colossians chapter 1, Paul here, he says to give thanks. We'll see that in a moment. But then he lists 4 or 5 good reasons why we should give thanks. So for this cause, King James, we also, since the day we heard it, do not cease to pray for you, and to desire that you might be filled with the knowledge of His will in all wisdom and spiritual understanding. This is one of Paul's famous prayers in the New Testament. Ephesians chapter 1, Colossians chapter 1, his 2 most famous prayers. So for this cause, since the day we heard it, we do not cease to pray for you. And, excuse me. Now he begins to bring out the prayer, and to desire that you might be filled with the knowledge of His will in all wisdom and spiritual understanding, that you might walk worthy of the Lord unto all pleasing, being fruitful in every good work, increasing in the knowledge of God, strengthened with all might, according to His glorious power, unto all patience and long suffering with joyfulness, giving thanks unto the Father. That word giving thanks is Eucharisto. It means a good response or reception by that which does not deserve, but we do not deserve, which would be grace. It expresses itself in thanksgiving and praise. Eucharist, we get the extra Eucharist from. So giving thanks unto the Father, who has made us meet, able to be partakers of the inheritance of the saints in the light. That's one of the things that we're thankful for. He says, be thankful that He's made us meet to be partakers of the inheritance of the saints in the light. Be thankful for that He's delivered us from the power of darkness. Be thankful for He has translated us into the kingdom of His dear Son. Be thankful for in whom you have redemption through His blood, even forgiveness of sins. Now you notice the things that Paul is bringing out here. He's bringing out these spiritual reasons or these spiritual tiers of things to be thankful for. Now you could bring in logistical things that if we wanted to, and things of the earth to be thankful for, and by all means that we should give thanks for all that. We'll see that in a few minutes. But Paul goes right to the top. This is what we want to be thankful for. And he gives these lists of these incredible spiritual promises that is that he lays out for us here. So number one, the thief of thanksgiving, of a thanksgiving heart, is a familiar heart. That's the term familiarity we've used many years here, and it's we probably take it we use it more in the English sense, modern English, than we do in the biblical sense. The word familiar biblically really doesn't have the same connotation to us, but in the English sense, familiar means that in a sense that I get used to. You can be used a good term, but it can be a bad thing too. Watch a couple brothers. You ever see any two brothers? Let's say you have two brothers and they're 10 and 12 years old. Does any one of them have authority? No. If any one of those two brothers tried to tell the other brother what to do, you're not the boss of me. And there's no way those two brothers are ever going to submit to one another's authorities. No way. Because either they love each other, yeah, but they're familiar with one another. You know what I mean? They're used to one another. They take each other for granted, if we could use that term. One of the things I've trained myself to do in my own believer priesthood, and this is when I get up in the morning, I'm usually the first one up in my home, and I walk through my home, and I just thank God for my home. Almost every day before I'm out of bed for 60 seconds, I thank God for my home, and I thank God for my family, and I thank God for my children and my wife, and these things, because I don't ever want to get familiar with that. I thank God for Grace Connection Church. I don't want to get familiar with the fact I have people that attend my church that call me pastor. I don't ever want to be familiar with that. One of the great thieves of a thanksgiving heart will be a familiar heart. I'm going to just move on because of time. The foundation of thanksgiving. What is it that keeps us thankful? Well, I just have two things here, really. First is humility. What keeps us thankful? Humility, lowliness of mind. As one person said, it's a life lived in the shadow of the Almighty with no shadow of their own self. Humility. It keeps me esteeming others better than myself. One of the most humbling words in the Bible is the word grace. When we see the word grace for what grace really is, something we don't deserve, the just dying for the unjust, not only does it make us incredibly humble, it makes us incredibly thankful. In fact, that's the only thing real grace, as we understand it, can produce in us. It will produce humility and it will produce thankfulness. It has to. Because the glory of God's grace is in the continuing illumination and the continual unveiling of our need, our depravity. If I think my depravity is this big, then God's grace is only that big. If I see my depravity is far greater than I've ever even conceived, then God's grace becomes more greater and greater and greater to me all the time. The more that I know I need Christ like breath, the more thankful I become. And the second quality is this quality called meekness. This is actually Sunday morning's message in our spiritual transformation series. Meekness, according to Zodiates, is just when we accept God's dealings with us as good. In other words, everything is good. We understand everything God's doing is good. We become thankful because we see God as good, with no necessarily self-justification, and we see everything that happens in our life as a manifestation of goodness, even some of the bad stuff. And so when I see God's dealings with me as good, God did this for me and it's good, it creates a thankfulness. It becomes my foundation for thankfulness. Reasons for thankfulness, and I really almost touched upon this already. Again, I'm cutting just a bunch of stuff out of the message just to get to a few key points here. But I really referred to this already in reading the scriptures. I mentioned about being thankful for my house, and I am thankful for my house, and for my family, and I am thankful for my family. I thank God for my health, and good health, and I thank God for little simple things that God's given me. I thank God for these things. But it's funny, because, I just dropped my money. Thank God for money. It's 2 pennies, so it tells you how humble I am. But I was looking at myself just as I was meditating on this message, and I wake up every morning and I thank God for these logistical blessings that God has given me. Relationships, United States of America, living in a great country which isn't third world. I could be born in any country, but I'm born in this one. I'm thankful that I was born in this country, because there's no other country I'd rather live in than this country. I travel around the world. This is the best place to be. Trust me, if you haven't been around the world, this is a great place to be. You want to live here. Visit those places, but you want to live here in the United States of America. So I looked at these things and I thank God for these things. But Paul, he didn't thank God for anything logistical here. He thanked God for making him, where am I here? Meet to be partakers of the inheritance of the saints in the light. He thanked God for delivering him from the power of darkness and being translated in the kingdom of his dear Son. He thanked God for having redemption through his blood and the forgiveness of sins. That was his criteria. That was his foundation for thankfulness. I thank God for those things too, but it seems like I go to the logistical blessings before I go to these spiritual work, the work of the cross, which Christ did for me. Which really is important, because those things I thank God for in time and space are going to end in time and space. But these things which I'm thanking God for here will be things I'll be thanking God for outside of the realm of time and for all eternity. I'm always going to be thanking God for the remission of my sins, the forgiveness of my sins. I'm always going to be thanking God that I'm delivered from the power of darkness and translated into a kingdom of his dear Son. That's always going to be on my lips of thankfulness for all eternity. I don't know I'll care much about my house 1 billion or 2 years from now. I care about now I live there. And I thank God I have a great place to live. See what I'm getting at here? So I want to elevate how what I really become thankful for. And I'm just going to close with this, because we talked about coming to reasons of thankfulness, and now the power of thankfulness. I want to leave you this, because then we want to go into prayer. It was about, I'm guessing it was 10, 15 years ago, maybe even longer than that. And there was, I was sitting in my office, and the secretary, Barbara Stein, was my mother-in-law at that point, was alive and with us. She was my secretary. She was sitting in the outer office, and I had numerous appointments were coming in throughout the day, and there was a staggering between the appointments. But this particular day, I just didn't feel right, not necessarily physically, but in my mind. I felt tired, and I felt a little overwhelmed, and I'm sitting there, and all I wanted to do was go home. I didn't want to talk to another person. I didn't want to see another person, and I didn't necessarily. That's always been my passion, is meeting with people and pastoring and stuff. But I just wanted to sort of go home, crawl in bed, and pull the covers over my head. And then it came to me, Tim, you're depressed. Wow. Well, I've never been much of a depressed person. I've always been sort of upbeat, and I was a Red Sox fan for years, and never they got depressed. Now, if I can overcome those things up to 2004, then my goodness, this guy I was a man of stout faith, but I found myself depressed. I was depressed. I remember even thinking to myself, so this is what it's like, because I'd never been depressed before. I said, this is odd. I couldn't go home because I had still 2 or 3 other appointments later on in that afternoon. So I remember I had this half-hour window or something, and I was just looking for some internal strength, and I really didn't have any. So this is what I did. I didn't know really what I was doing, but I just started thanking God for, verbally in my office, God, thank you for my children. Thank you for my church, and thank you for my car, and thank you for this, and thank you for that, and thank you for my health, and thank you for my parents, and thank you for my upbringing, and thank you. And I just started listing things in my heart that I was thankful for. I'm not even sure I knew why I was doing it. I don't remember the mechanism that made me think that way, but I just remembered, we're talking 3, 4, 5 minutes. The joy of the Lord was upon me again. The depression just came and lifted off me. Now, I believe, in retrospect, that the depression I suffered at that point was demonic in nature. I don't think it was even natural, because it came on me so suddenly, out of nowhere, indiscernible. There was no reason for it. Nothing was going necessarily bad. There was no overwhelming burdens in my life or anything like that. It wasn't circumstantial depression. I don't have any of the chemical issues or anything like that. But it just came out of nowhere. So I'm like, okay, where did this come from? Well, there's only one guy I know called Lucifer that would like me to be depressed for no apparent reason. But as soon as I started thanking God, it's lifted off me. It came off me. I sensed it was gone. There's a power in becoming thankful. There's a spiritual authority in becoming thankful. You know why I think that is? It's because I think it takes self and gets them right out of the room. It takes me as the center of my own universe and takes me off my own throne and puts God back on the throne where he belongs. So we start thanking God. When I'm thanking God, I don't feel sorry for myself. When I'm thanking God, I'm not a victim. When I'm thanking God, I'm not living in the remorse of yesterday and my bad decisions, my mistakes, and my lack of good decision, whatever it is. I'm just thanking God. All of a sudden, my focus is totally off myself, and I'm thanking God. And I thank God for anything and everything, from my car to my dog, not really, but to whatever comes to my heart, whatever is laid on my heart, I just lift them up because I believe, as you do too, that everything we have is what? It's a gift. Try it. Try it tomorrow. Try it as I throw long touchdown passes tomorrow in the Turkey Bowl. Thank God that he's my quarterback, Tim Brady. and just, I'm kidding. And so, but just thank God for these things, and whatever God lays on your heart, and watch what happens. There's a supernatural. Something supernatural takes place. I'll just call it the release of the Spirit. The Spirit of God just seems to be released. It edifies, it empowers, it restructures, it refocuses. Anytime you feel oppressed and down, just begin thanking God for the blessings he's given you. And I understand this is very simplistic, and there's a whole level of things that people need to deal with that I'm not trying to make it oversimplistic here. But just practice this. I have practiced this. I've made this almost a daily practice in my life. And I can tell you, it does something immediately to my spirit. It elevates me. It builds me up. It leads me into praise. It leads me into worship. It leads me to adoration of God. And all of a sudden, life and its stuff becomes lesser and lesser and lesser. Would you